New York City is about to vote in its first ever self-described socialist mayor, Zohran Mamdani. Welcome to the beginning of the end of the greatest city in the world.
Welcome back. With just 5 days to go until Election Day, a new poll shows that Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani has a significant lead in the race for New York City mayor. Mamdani, the Democratic nominee, leads Andrew Cuomo, who's running as an independent, by 25 percentage points in the new Emerson College poll. Republican Curtis Sliwa is a distant third.
It's basically in the bag for Mamdani, partially because his opponents, Curtis Sliwa and Andrew Cuomo, are still splitting the rest of the normal people vote, but also because Mamdani has the flowery rhetoric and the virality and the aesthetics that get the kids in New York City really jazzed. He's a charismatic campaigner, there's no denying that, but the nuts and bolts, the actual mechanics of whether Mamdani's policies will actually work, well, the kids have their fingers in their ears for that. So it's the delusional Gen Z New Yorkers whose parents probably subsidize their rent, who went to Ithaca College and UC Berkeley, and who are allured by Mamdani's Santa Claus promises. They'll be deciding this race. Let's lock in.
So you know some of my favorite songs, they start with an old quote. Mm-hmm. That's how a song might begin. And so for me, one of them is from Dr. King. Call it democracy or call it democratic socialism. There must be a better distribution of wealth for all people in this country.
Mamdani can do less damage on the economic front than some conservatives think. That is, if New York Democratic Governor Kathy Hochul follows through on her promise. She basically did a George H.W. Bush recently and said, read my lips, no new taxes, Zohran.
One of them is Zohran Mamdani, who says that he would need to work with Albany and you very closely. And his whole campaign is based on raising taxes, which he says that he can get you to be on board with. Would you be on board with that?
No, I'm not raising taxes on people at a time when affordability is the big issue. I'm actually cutting middle-class taxes.
Even on the wealthy?
I don't want to lose any more people to go to Palm Beach. We've lost enough. We had a major out-migration when Republicans in Congress eliminated the state and local tax deduction. New Yorkers paid $72 billion more to the federal government over the last 7 years because Republicans didn't stand up, and they need a full restoration of this. So that was a driver. I don't want to give anyone else who's supporting our economy, and their taxes are appreciated, and their support for the philanthropies, et cetera. Driving them to Florida does not help us. So let's be smart about this.
But when it comes to public safety, young women like me will be sitting ducks in Mamdani's regime. Let's just say I'm never taking public transportation again.
The things that give New Yorkers concern is especially happening in our subway system. And these are not incidents that might necessarily be categorized in CompStat or as a crime, but they are moments that showcase a mental health crisis, a homelessness crisis. And we have asked police officers to be the ones responsible and to respond to that, even though these are the same officers who signed up to respond to shootings, to respond to murders, to respond to serious crimes across our city. So our vision for a Department of Community Safety, the DCS, is that we would have teams of dedicated mental health outreach workers that we deploy to the 100 stations with the highest levels of mental health crises to respond to those incidents and get those New Yorkers out of the subway system and to the services that they actually need.
Mamdani wants us to quite literally bring a pencil to a knife fight. Instead of empowering law enforcement to arrest criminals, he wants to send social workers into the subways to de-escalate problems with emotionally disturbed people, many of whom are violent. He wants to create a Department of Community Safety with outreach teams of peers and mental health professionals and emergency medical workers to diffuse explosive situations on public transit and around the city. I'm sorry, I fail to see how a therapist is going to stop a lunatic who's terrorizing innocent commuters with a machete, but okay.
I will create a Department of Community Safety, the DCS. This new agency will coordinate a whole-of-government approach to protect New Yorkers like never before. We will invest in citywide mental health outreach and crisis response, expand gun violence prevention programs, address hate, and tackle homelessness. The DCS will make public transit safer, placing dedicated outreach workers in our subway stations, transforming vacant commercial units to provide medical services and connections to long-term care, and investing in transit ambassadors to assist New Yorkers on their journeys. There will be visible, trained teams in our subways. Their presence and their work will make all of us safer.
But it gets worse. Mamdani wants to multiply how many mentally ill homeless people are prowling about the subways in the first place. He wants to convert empty retail spaces and the MTA system into city-run facilities that offer drop-in services for the homeless. This will encourage more of these people, who sometimes are ticking time bombs, to enter the system, making morning and evening commutes more nerve-wracking for the working class of New York. And commuters in the city already rate their safety in the subway at slightly below an already very worrying 6 out of 10. But we shouldn't be surprised Mamdani would have no problem making life more hellish for average people. He's been very privileged in his ivory tower. He's a Nepo baby with a famous film director mother and a globally renowned academic father. He did not go to the School of Hard Knocks like the blue collar of New York. He went to the very elite Bowdoin College. The I'm for every man shtick is a load of baloney. Okay, open up your house to the homeless then, Mamdani. Put your money where your mouth is. This is what Rob Henderson of the Manhattan Institute calls luxury beliefs. Mamdani has ideas that make the affluent feel good about themselves but impose major costs on everyone else, like the working class constituencies that Mamdani claims to be a champion of. If Mamdani really wanted to make the subway better, he'd advocate for more cops on the beat and on the platforms, and more paths to involuntary commitment for the extremely unwell, who are incompatible with civil society.
I think it's one of the key reasons why we have to make buses free is because it reduces the assaults on bus drivers. It creates a safer work environment.
Mamdani wants bus rides to also be free in New York City. This relates to the public safety issue because this would eliminate the barrier to vagrants and crazy people getting on the bus with the law-abiding.
Mamdani says as mayor, he'd make buses free. Riders could skip the lines, use all the doors to board quickly, and finally get moving.
Without hyperbole, the slowest buses in the country, 8 miles an hour. We could have this interview walking alongside it and still get there before the bus.
Does Mamdani realize what he's saying here?
If you talk to bus drivers, you'll hear again and again that a significant number of assaults are tied to fare bucks. We found that we decreased assaults on bus drivers by 38.9%.
Can the city afford this right now with the federal cuts looming?
I think we absolutely can.
Mamdani says he'd bring in $9 billion by raising the state's top corporate tax rate and personal income taxes on New Yorkers making $1 million a year.
Sir, every nut job in the city will now be able to freely ride the bus under your rule, whereas before you had at least to pay something into the system. So how is this going to reduce assaults on bus drivers and passengers? This is clown world logic.
The Rent Guidelines Board will vote Monday on increases for rent-stabilized apartments. The public had one last chance Friday to weigh in on potential rent hikes.
We have to ensure that we are doing our part. And that's why I have said I'm going to freeze the rent for more than 2 million rent-stabilized tenants, because that's the mayor's power. Mm-hmm. The last mayor did that 3 times.
Mamdani's plan to freeze the rent is also absolutely nuts. Fewer than half of New York rental apartments are regulated, so when Mamdani promises a rent freeze, he's only talking about those. And those who don't happen to own one of these artificially capped apartments will suffer, because landlords will have to raise rents on those other apartments that they have to cover the increasing money drain of the regulated ones. This plan will punish landlords as well because it's capping how much money they can actually make on their business. So landlords have less incentive to stay in the game. Voila, the housing shortage in the city that Gen Z is constantly complaining about just got a whole lot worse. Between buses that are filled with more loonies and run slower, because since when does a public resource that is used more get faster? Usually doesn't. There'll be buildings that are falling into dilapidation because why would a landlord maintain the building if his profits are going to be limited? And subways are going to be a free-for-all for the mentally ill. Mamdani's proposed policies are going to throw hardworking people to the wolves, under the bus, and kill confidence in this city. But what do you think? Am I being too doomer? Are things really going to be that bleak under Mamdani, or will the powers that be in City Hall, in the bureaucracy, and in the New York state governorship and state legislature gonna neuter his ambitions significantly? I'm not so sure, but leave your thoughts in the comments below. And please give us a like, subscribe, and click the notification bell. Make sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and for more, check out my articles at nationalreview.com.